He's called Hamilton one of Canada's most exciting cities. And now Toronto developer Brad Lamb is moving forward with his first project here, a 2-tower television city project on the site of the CHCH studios. To talk more about his vision, how it fits into the neighborhood, Brad is here with me now. Welcome to City Matters.
Thanks for having me.
I think I speak for a lot of people who say, welcome to Hamilton. You've been called the condo king. You've built hundreds of units in Toronto. You've been into the Calgary, Edmonton markets. You've been in the Ottawa market. Hamilton always has been kind of labeled and stuck beside Toronto and is the poor sister to Toronto and Greater Toronto. So why have you said categorically, I'm not building in Toronto anymore, I'm going elsewhere, and one of your targets is Hamilton?
Well, I think it was misquoted. I am still building in Toronto, but I wasn't misquoted in saying I'm excited about Hamilton. I think that Hamilton is a real city, and for me, I'm not interested in the suburbs as a developer. I'm interested in cities, and from my standpoint, from the scalability of Hamilton, to me, it's a bigger city than Ottawa is, and I see it as having more potential and more sort of an urban vibe to it. You've got some great things happening here. There's going to be a lot more great things happening, and I want to be a part of it.
Folks in the Ottawa Valley aren't going to be happy with what you just said, but we welcome what you just said. Look, on this show, we have talked to chambers of commerce, and we have talked to other developers, musicians, artisans. The millennials are coming to Hamilton. You know our real estate market very well. It has just taken off. And even though it cooled off a little bit over the summer, that's in part because of new regulations that have come in regarding real estate in the Greater Toronto area. But we have so many things happening right now that it's, you're very proud to once again be a Hamilton citizen.
Sure.
Because as we were saying before the show, you even worked here during the best of times when all of our manufacturing and heavy industrial was still thriving. We've seen the worst of times, and now it seems we're on a roll that can't be stopped. So I'm sure some will say, hey, thank you, Brad, for recognizing our potential and what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it can be stopped, and that's the issue, right? So it's important. I mean, I've seen this in many cities. It's not a foregone conclusion that Hamilton will become what it wants or needs to be. I think it needs some smart people and some rational people, and without that, it probably won't fulfill its destiny. It's not an automatic. I was in the early days in Toronto, and we had some good people stimulating that marketplace, and the condominium marketplace in Toronto saved Toronto. Mm. The two kings were created to allow condominiums on King East and King West in these dying industrial areas. And it was the condominium market that re-stimulated the East and West end of lower downtown. And without it, there wouldn't be nothing that's happening there today. So
the Distillery District is amazing. And was thriving, and it was derelict.
It was, and it was 3 condominium developers that bought it. And they had a vision for it, and they brought in a larger partner later. But these things take intrepid investors and developers. They take forward-thinking city councilors and mayors, and they take citizens that get behind the growth. And if all 3 things aren't happening, it's not going to happen.
One of the first Toronto developers, and I know you worked with him, to recognize Hamilton's potential was Harry Stinson. He got poo-pooed, he got raked over the coals when he suggested that the Royal Connaught could be turned into something and the parking lot could be this 100-story tower. He got poo-pooed, it didn't happen, and people thought, whatever, not going to happen in Hamilton. And yet since 2008 and the recession and the fact that we kind of survived that pretty well, things have taken off here. Mm-hmm. And you know Harry very well. You've come knocking, and we haven't even talked about Television City yet. Mm-hmm. You've come knocking in more than just that one idea. You're looking at 3, 4, possibly 5 projects in the city of Hamilton?
We have 3 large sites that we own now, a total of about $1 billion in development. We're looking at others. We're looking at some very large sites, even larger than Television City. It all depends on how these things play out. And also how the Hamilton real estate economy can absorb these world-class projects. It's not a foregone conclusion that, I mean, you know, the good of it is that you get these great projects. The bad of it is that prices are higher than people are used to in the city. You can't build world-class developments, you know, at you know, a prairie town price. It's just not possible. So what needs to happen here is, unfortunately, real estate prices do need to rise to allow for high-rise housing to exist, because high-rise housing is expensive. But the future of all these cities, like Hamilton, which needs to intensify if it's going to survive, it needs to have a more populated downtown core. We need to obviously eliminate travel times and the lack of efficiencies with congestion in cities and so on. It will only survive in the modern world if it's competitive and attracts employers and employees. And that means a modern city, and a modern city means high-rise. It doesn't necessarily mean 40 stories or 50 stories or 60 stories, but it means a fundamental shift in how people see Hamilton. And if they don't get on board, I question whether or not what's possible here will happen.
Let's talk about Television City, because it made a big splash in the early summer. He's coming. He's coming. It's like, is this good, or is he the boogeyman? I mean, he's coming. Brad Lamb is coming. Television City. Yeah. You started out with a proposal of 35 and 45-story buildings on the CHCH property in partnership with another well-known gentleman in this city. And you've already met with the councillor, some preliminary meetings with the councillor, with the city, and with the Durand Neighborhood Association. And what transpired after that? You knocked down some floors.
We did. I mean, we weren't sure exactly what height we wanted to build. Certainly would love 45 and 35, but we weren't sure. And we got a response that indicated that that was too high, so we pared it down. We think that this is appropriate in that what a lot of people aren't aware of is this neighborhood's getting rezoned anyways to a potential 30 stories. So I think that, you know, reasonable people would say 2 30-story towers are okay. And our argument is that we're taking, you know, a third of the property, which is the portion where the historic mansion sits, and we're locking that down forever with zero density. So we're saying, okay, if we could build a 20-story building around this house, drag the house to the front, put a 20-story building behind it, and integrate the mansion with a tower, then we could actually get more density on the site. We're saying we'll do less density, much less density. Let's add 10 stories to the 30-story tower and provide very narrow towers. They're only 7,000 feet. The actual density is between 10 and 12 times coverage, which is, we do 15-story buildings in Toronto at 10 or 12 times coverage. They're big whale buildings. They're not attractive. Slender towers are better for light, for views, for everything, and they're beautiful to look at. Density
is a provincial guideline. We don't really want urban sprawl anymore, so density in existing neighborhoods is a mantra that's coming out of Queen's Park. But the Durand folks will tell you that the Durand neighborhood is the densest neighborhood in Hamilton, and they have concerns. And about 10 days ago, Janice Brown from the Durand Neighborhood Association was here, and I tried to put words in her mouth by saying what I said. If we could roll that now. Is this one of those over your dead bodies kinds of fights that's coming up?
I think we will give it everything that we have. And of course, we're hoping that our councillor will certainly help us out, because he certainly carries weight. And he has said to us, he realizes that Durand is the densest, probably, neighborhood in Hamilton. And there are other places that buildings like this could go.
So we didn't get the first part of the clip, but basically I was saying and recognizing that the Durand Neighborhood Association was probably the first one organized in the 70s when so many apartment buildings were going into Durand, and they fought, and the cranes went away from Hamilton, frankly, at that point in time. And she mentioned Councillor Jason Farr, who in the story where you suggest you were misquoted, Farr expressed doubt the project would proceed as proposed, saying Lamb's attempt to create a buzz is a similar technique used by condo developer Harry Stinson, as I referenced earlier. Have you had an opportunity to sit down with Jason Farr?
No, I've sat down with Jason Farr 3 times. And, listen, there are no guarantees in this business, but
Yeah.
Jason has never said to me directly that your project's too high. What he said is, we have a lot of people at the table, and the city planning department is one participant, I'm one, and the neighborhood's the other, and we need to talk. So, we're here to talk. I understand what the head of the Durand Neighborhoods Association, what their concerns are. I hear it all the time. I do hear it all the time, and I'm not sure why density is bad. I think that if you look at anyone's image of the future, density is part of it. And I think that there's a fear of high buildings and that they're this terrible monster. But what the key is what is density? By definition, it's the total coverage of the site. So there are projects near us that were built in the 70s that are far denser than we are. Mm-hmm. We're going to be 10 to 12 times coverage. We could build a 20-story building and get 15 times coverage. It would be a pig of a building. I don't think it'd be good for the city, but we could hammer that through. Is anyone be happy with that, though? So what we tried to do is be reasonable in our request for total density, and we've asked to put it higher. And higher, to me, is beautiful. And these buildings are going to be important additions to the skyline going forward. They're not going to be negative additions. Nobody complains about the World Trade Center before they were knocked down. No one complained they were ugly and too high, right? So I think that early on, yes, people complain they're too high, and once they're done, everyone comes down and holds hands about how great these buildings are. I think you need to give density a chance.
Your goal is to make it the best project ever seen in Hamilton.
That's our goal. Yeah.
You started the buzz in the spring. You had the big gala last week.
Yeah.
Have you started ticket sales?
We had
ticket sales.
We did have
condo sales, not ticket sales.
We open up in the next few weeks.
Okay.
We have several thousand people that have expressed interest in coming down and kicking the tires. We had a friends and family event with our partner, and so the two entities, my company and their company, had a friends and family event. So some units are sold, but we've got plenty to sell. Plenty of fantastic apartments to sell.
Okay, let me ask you, because this could be a very long process. Have you already applied for rezoning?
Oh yes, no, we've been into the city for rezoning for several months.
And there's a time limit, is there not, on zoning, where they need to respond to you?
Yes, so in this particular case, it's 6 months. And we do have the option of the Ontario Municipal Board still. Mm-hmm. That option could be extinguished. We're not sure of how the Premier is going to weigh in on applications made prior to the legislation, but that option's available. I've used it many times in the past. I don't believe we need to use it here in Hamilton. I think that calm heads will prevail, that people will see the benefits of the project and what it's going to do for the city. It's going to make the Durand neighborhood a much better neighborhood, I believe.
Durand has used the OMB as well, as you probably know. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you research where you're going and what you might be up against. You've talked about the units going to, this density, more of a middle-class kind of building. There might be some high rollers who are on the top floors, mm-hmm. but basically a middle-class kind of building. Who are you targeting? Who do you think is going to want and live in those towers if approved?
I mean, basically, we're a middle-class developer in that we cater our projects to that kind of buyer. I think that's the buyer that needs the most help. And I think that people have a lot of money, can build a beautiful penthouse, and they can design it the way they like. We want to build beautiful homes for people that maybe can't always afford beautiful homes. We put in a lot of amazing detail to our homes. Our buyers are parents whose kids are struggling, going to university, investors who want to make some money as a mm-hmm. landlord, young couples that want to buy their first property, couples with kids. This building has facilities for 20-year-olds, facilities for 7-year-olds. We've got a great gym, we've got a dog walk, we've got a technology center for people that don't necessarily go to work every day. They may work at home and they don't want to be upstairs alone in their apartment. We have a technology center where they can plug in and be with all other people like them. There's a kids facility where kids can go mental, not in the home, but maybe in this more protected environment and be with other kids so they can integrate with people. It's a great place for people to meet. So we've done everything we can to make this a rounded place to live. It's a neighborhood. In the 600 units that are here, it's a neighborhood.
Some terrific looking pictures with the goal to make this the best ever. You want to put a shovel in the ground when?
We want to put a shovel in the ground in June 2019, about a year and 9 months.
And be open 2021?
About 5 years from June of this last June. So, what is that? Is that 2022? Yeah, it's a 5-year process. It's going to take us a year and a half to 2 years to go through the political process, which is the Durant neighborhood and Jason Farr and planning department and whoever else we need to deal with. And then there's also a lot of technology and engineering that goes into this. And we do have a train track to the south of us, which requires some special consideration.
Yes.
And it's also a very wet site, which requires some special consideration. So there's a lot of planning and engineering that's going into this project right
It's
now.
an old sandbar, is it not?
Yeah.
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 I'm
We
sure
gotta
you'll
send
hit.
we got to send piles down.
Yeah.
10 stories.
A final comment from you. Hamilton is now being compared. Brooklyn is a distinct place, and there's a rebirth going on. Do you see a parallel between Brooklyn, who never considered themselves New Yorkers? We got our own baseball and football teams here. We're not New Yorkers. We just happen to be lumped in
Except
as
the
a
baseball
borough.
team left.
Yeah. But those things that made it stick out in its day, but now its day is back.
Yes.
I mean, is Hamilton in the shadow of Toronto
Well, there's
about to have the
similarities.
Brooklyn day?
Yeah, there's similarities in that they're smaller cities next to a monster,
Yeah.
and the monster does overshadow to some extent that city. But Hamilton is nothing like Brooklyn. I would just say it's the similarity of these two monsters that suck up all the air in the room. But you know, what's great about I think what's great about Hamilton is it's a big city, but it's a small piece of land. So you know, you take the gates of Hamilton to the very west end of it, north and south. It's not a huge parcel of property to see if there's enough energy for this thing to be beautiful. I mean, it could be, with the mix of old that survived and the new that could come, this could be one of the best cities in the world. Like, it won't be the biggest city, but it might be one of the best. It's got a lot of great things going for it.
We'd love to have you back as developments progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Lamb, Toronto developer, bringing 3, 4, maybe 5 projects to Hamilton. City Matters at 4, 6, and 10 p.m. on Cable 14 and anytime on cable14now.com.